decided, previous speakers also spoke, that the use of technology is mainly in two aspects. One is in evaluation of diabetes, and another is in the treatment or delivery of insulin. These are the two major pillars where technology comes very handy in our patient management. So starting up with the first session, which is evaluation of technology, and probably the newest technology that we have in evaluation of diabetes is continuous glucose monitoring, whether it is a retrospective continuous glucose monitoring, what we call as diagnostic approach, retrospective approach, ambulatory glucose profile, and another is a real-time continuous glucose monitoring, where the patient is able to see a glucose at that particular point and is able to act on it. So, starting with the first question, which has made the continuous glucose monitoring to be included in the guidelines and made the evaluation of continuous glucose monitoring very useful, is the current recent evidence on time in range. And probably this is the evidence that has helped us to involve the continuous glucose monitoring into the recommendations. So I would start with Dr. Rajiv Kovil sir on what is TIR, what are the normal values, and how do we clinically use the time in range when we are using a continuous glucose monitor?
Thank you, Anjali, for that question. Thank you, the whole organizers, Dr. Kanogo, Dr. Das, as well as Dr. Panda for having me here. And thanks, Bansi, for acknowledging me during your talk. Technology, as Jyotidev put it, is an evolutionary science. And 25 years back, just a small example, I was using a Motorola pen, phone, which was almost 8 to 10 inches. And then started using a Nokia in early 2000. And when the iPhone and touch technology came, the Nokia Swedish guys didn't think that could change the world. And today, the touch technology has changed the world. So what is the conclusion of this is that everyone needs to adopt technology, because technology is going to change the world. So TIR is a very important tool, a very powerful tool, and whether it actually may change HbA1c in the future is something which is a completely different debate, because we're looking at two different things. But TIR is a very important tool which helps us in finding out what is the time in range for our patient. And what it requires is a CGMS, which is put in for at least 14 days, and where 70% of the readings come in a particular range, then we say that the patient is in the time in range. The time in range which the software tells us is anywhere between 70 to 180. We can also tweak it to have it between 70 to 140. We expect 70% of the readings to be in that range, then we can say that the person is in time in range. We expect 4 to maybe 20% of the readings to be above or below the range, and then we can say the patient is either above the range or below the range. So time in range is going to replace a lot of powerful tools which is there to actually evaluate glucose monitoring in our patients. And time in range again brings into fold that glycemic variability is an extremely important phenomenon, or probably the most important link between diabetes and complications. Because for 4.5 decades, we have used HbA1c as a surrogate marker for glycemic control, whether it was in DCCT or whether it was in the UKPDS. But getting HbA1c to the goal never helped us answer the question whether we could prevent or reduce complications. But TIR is something that which actually could tell us whether these fluctuations, one, glycemic variability, whether it's linked to complications, because a lot of data today suggests that getting a patient into a good TIR does reduce hypo and hyper, whether it in the longer run prevents and reduces the morbidity and mortality due to a complication. We need a good randomized controlled trial. Flat sugar study was one of them, which told us that if we can reduce the fluctuations, we can help in them. TIR also is today going to be a very important feature in where control is very critical. Whether it's going to be in patients who are in pregnancy, though it is not yet a labeled indication, but TIR is going to be a very important tool which we use to see whether patients are in critical control. also are type 1 diabetics, and also are patients who are very, very high risk for hypoglycemia unaware. So most of our patients who are on multi-dose insulin and very high risk for hypoglycemia are going to use CGM, and TIR is going to be a powerful tool in us actually analyzing their blood sugar variability, I would say. Over to you, Anjali, again.
Great, sir.
Hi, Anjali, sorry,
Yes,
can I butt in
yes,
with a
yes,
question?
sir.
So
Please.
one, asking the tech guys to allow Bansi to share his video. Dr. Bansi Sabu's video was shut and he's requesting
I don't know.
the same. Yeah.
I don't know why it is shut.
Bansi, okay, yeah, now it's on. So, Rajiv, a question to you and to anybody else who wants to answer. There have been some recent papers of everybody working in the time and range aspect, and probably you will also agree that when we are doing CGMs and looking at time and range, which clearly seems to be a better way of looking at TIR, SMBG does not give us, there are deficiencies in even a good 7-point SMBG giving us TIR. But people do feel that getting patients to the recommended or target time in range of 70% may actually be easier than getting patients into an HbA1c of less than 7%. Right? Thoughts from any of the panelists here?
So, Manoj, if I could take that,
Yeah, please.
It also means that the postprandial hype, if we can reduce the postprandial delta, you get more patients in time in range, and probably if you don't reduce it, you may not get to an HbA1c of less than 7. And if we look at the DCCT, where they tried to dissect the DCCT data into TIR, though DCCT uses a 7-point SMBG, and they reached a HbA1c, as Bansi was saying, of 7.2, and it is a landmark trial as far as strategy goes in patients with type 1 diabetes. The difference between the intensive and conventional was 51% with the intensive versus 39% with the conventional. So they had a 10 to 12% difference in TIR in the DCCT itself, and that itself evolved into a large difference in microvascular, and then the DCCT EDIC, which showed us macrovascular emergent risk reductions as well. So I think even if you don't get the patient into the HbA1c below 7, if you're going to get them into a flatter range, you're going to reduce complications. And type 1 diabetes is a very good medium to test a strategy. Bansi or Mithun or Dr. Das, would you like to add on?
Essentially, what you're saying, Rajiv, is that TIR targets may become more practical and achievable than A1C, because the fact is that for decades, everywhere globally, we are failing to get our patients to a target A1C of less than 7. And as Anjali said in her introduction, that overall the percentage, it really is terrible to think about with all the advances.
Absolutely.
One of the reason could be because the person who is on a continuous glucose monitoring, I mean, those patients who are type 2 diabetic patients, if they are on real one or on a professional one, you will find their hypo and hyperglycemia, you will able to better control. You will able to educate them, and probably you will get the TIR in a better position. While the patients, when we are doing A1C, like A1C, if I get for one patient, it is going to give you the information about last 3 months. And then I am going to start whatever which I am doing it. Either I am up titrating or I am adding some molecule, only with the assumption that this is going to reduce his sugar in next 3 months, maybe by next 3 months by 1% or 1.5%. It is just my assumption. And patient in between, if he develops hypoglycemia, probably he may eat more, or he may not understand the importance of postprandial hyperglycemia. He may not monitor so much so, and that's the reason the average A1C of the patient is most of the time is 7.5 or 8. But if you do the patient's continuous monitoring, I'm sure patient in next 7 days or 15 days, they will find that their time in range is better controlled, because they are themselves also motivated. It is like seeing is believing. When you are seeing it, you will start believing that yes, this is important for me.
Bansi, which gets us to the next question, and you could take it, or Mithun or Debashish, is that when you talk about time in range, which is gaining so much importance, is it relevant more from a real-time CGM point of view? And then when you look at a blinded or professional CGM giving us a TIR, can both these two metrics be given the same kind of importance, whether you're doing through a real-time CGM where you're changing everything, or from a blinded CGM perspective? Mithun, do you want to take that?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. Before I say that, I thank Dr. Kanugo, Dr. Jain Panda, and Dr. A.K. Das for inviting me here. I would agree with that. Blinded we know what's a more purer term in terms of real time. If they're chopping and changing a lot, it's a little difficult to analyze if the whole data is not given by the patient to you as what he has chopped and changed. For type 1, real time is perfect. I think it's really nice. But a time in range is an evolving, like Manoj has said, and Rajiv has already said, it's an evolving concept, and it will bring the focus back to what's happening now. Like Bansi Bhai has said, that, rather than talking about something which has happened in the past and equating them to see what's in the future, I think I personally find the blinded much better too, because I find things have not been changed and you can have a better educational discussion. The real time is perfect for type 1 or somebody who behaves like type 1. But other than that, a lot of variation, unless the patient gives you, can cause problems.
Unless patient is highly empowered and understand and educated, then and then a real time is real beneficial. Only some of the type 1 can be like that. Otherwise, blinded is sometimes better because it gives you also the prediction and how to change. And we had seen our experience with professional one is better than even now the pro had come. I mean, the Libre had also come, but still we enjoy the using the pro.
Dr. Devashish, would you like to add?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with Dr. Bansi. I think the real time is really very helpful, especially if the patient is engaged and motivated, and he takes a proactiveness in changing things and can really keep the blood sugars in the TIR range. But in a blinded, for a blinded one, if you don't have a motivated patient, then it's very difficult. So it could be a retrospective analysis you can do and change it later, but then during the course of time, you can't change it then. Only you can do a retrospective analysis and then a progressive, maybe prospectively you advise it.
In the coming times, do the panelists see that RT-CGM, that is real-time CGM, would number or outgrow the use of retrospective CGM, or you would still like to continue with retrospective? Manoj sir, what's your opinion?
Okay, good. I'm glad you asked me that. I don't see that happening in our self-pay market. So real-time CGM, as everybody is alluding to, a great tool for type 1s, those who are living and making decisions every minute, be it on insulin pumps or on MDIs. I think great means for them to keep changing. So it's an ideal tool for them. Having said that, it's only for those who can still afford to use it on a continuous basis. If you can't use RT-CGM on a continuous basis, let's understand that the usage and importance of an RT-CGM is only for those days where you are using it. It does not have any impact on the days after that because you are changing your dosage and behavior and everything. Now, as compared to that, in our country, where there will always be limitations of resources, using a blinded or a professional CGM, which currently may be used by most of us in our patients maybe once a year or once in 6 months or rarely often, does give us a value in finding out the patterns and suggesting any changes in therapeutic terms or lifestyle aspects. So clearly, I don't see RT-CGM changing the scenario. I think we're still in very, very early nascent stages for the CGM use itself in our country, but there clearly is a huge divide, and for obvious the reasons of even the cost divide between the professional CGM and the real-time CGM. Professional CGM is the way ahead in the near future, at least.
Absolutely. It would also make sense to know that the real-time CGM, now I'm sure it's changing with the Abbott's Libre, but will give an alarm, which can also be sometimes irritating to the patient. I have a patient who has bought the system, but is not using because the alarm continuously irritates. Many of the times, I think the doctors as well as patients are not aware of what to do when an alarm is coming or the glucose is going down, the glucose is going up. We have discussed TIR few minutes back. I would like to have a discussion on what would be the normal TIR, what would be the allowance of hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia to make the patient understand better what are the times when he should intervene and what are the times when he should not. Or even the doctor, when we are analyzing the ambulatory glucose profile that has been created by a previous use of retrospective glucometers, what should be the time in target, what should be allowed above, and what should be the time below the range. Dr. Chandan Das sir, is he here? Do we have him?
I don't see him currently. Maybe somebody else wants to take that. So Anjali, is the question about different from the recommendation in terms of what is clearly recommended as the
Yes.
permissible time in range, time above range, and time
Yes.
below range? Are you asking whether in our context is that good enough, or people are looking at a different recommendation? Is that your question?
Both. I think it's a forum where we can also discuss what is the recommendation and what is that which is more practically possible.
Yeah,
go ahead, Rajiv. Yeah.
So the recommendation is 70% to be in the TIR, which is 70 to 180, and in the less than which is the TBR below range, you should have less than 4% in that range between 70 to 54, and less than 1% below 54. And in the time above the range, I think you should not be more than 25% above the range. So that's what is for most type 1 and type 2 diabetics. It changes in gestational, where you want the TIR to be between 80 to 85%, and your time above the range should be, I believe, less than 10%, and time below the range less than 1%. So I believe these are the areas where you have the type 2 who's going into hypo, and the GDMs where the TIR becomes extremely important. And just to allude to your previous question, I think the professional CGM helps more in diagnosing problems, and the real-time CGM helps probably in therapy correction and a lot of behavioral modification. Because if you have somebody snooping on us, like the WhatsApp is going to snoop on us, we'll better curtail our behavior now. So it's very much like a monitor sitting on your head. So real-time CGM will really help you.
Yeah, excellent point, sir. Excellent point.
If I could add, see,
Yes.
Bansi Bhai is here. He was one of the consensus guideline international authors. 70 to 180 is what I think we are starting at. But I think as time is going to go on, progress is going to go, we're going to tighten. I think I would see that being tightening up with passage of time when people are getting used to this concept of TIAR. Because there's a good paper by Richard Bugenstein which showed that the normal variation is between 70 to 140. So I think once people start getting used to this concept, trying to play around with it, I think things are going to come down from 180 slightly tighter and tighter. I think that would have what I would see things happening with passage of time.
Absolutely. So I think it is a gift of technology that first we are trying to achieve minimum or absent hypoglycemia. And once we achieve that, I think we would be in a position to achieve better control of hyperglycemia without causing hypoglycemia, which will, I think, give us a good microvascular complication cover without increasing the macrovascular complications, which are mainly contributed by the hypoglycemic episodes with intensive diabetes care. So wonderful. With that, Dr. Mithun, I would also want you to focus on what is going to be the cost effectivity of the retrospective or real-time continuous glucose monitor.
I think that's a very valid question, Anjali, in the current scenario. Post-COVID, some people are out of pocket, some people are really, there's economic crunch. In fact, I was speaking, that's an interesting anecdote I'll mention. I was speaking to my friend in UK, 80% of the salary is being paid by the government till March 2021. So we do not have that kind of support to a lot of employees that are there in the private segment. So I think what I'm looking at presently is that when I'm going to use a CGMS, be it real time or be it blinded, is when I feel there's a mismatch between SMBGs and HbA1c, and I need to find out more details about this patient. So now, if I have done that, there are two ways in which I could go down depending on the pocket of the patient. I could do structured SMBG. If I don't then correct or not been able to solve the problem, I'll do a CGMS. The CGMS will help us, if it's a blinded, identify where the problem is. I would rather go for a blinded CGMS at this stage because, as Manoj has said, the cost is almost 50%, if not more, if you take into account buying the reader and other things. So I would do a blinded CGMS, do a diagnostic AGP, find out exactly where the problem is. Once I've identified and then going to change behavior or change medication, the question is, now what do I do next? Because should I go for another CGMS at this point of time, real-time CGMS or blinded? Or so what I personally tried and doing over this last couple of years is after that I do a structured SMBG, focusing on the area which I've highlighted was the problem in the blinded CGMS.
True.
To see if that has sorted the problem. If that has not then sorted the problem, then you have an educated discussion with the patient, go for another blinded CGMS. So that is the way I feel. There's a good paper that has come out recently by Kutrozola, and a new concept has come up, which is point in range, similar to target time in range, which is by structured SMBG. So I think that more data is going to come out. It talks also about point in range, point above range, point below range. And there's some good data which suggesting its correlation with HbA1c as there is correlation with time in range. So as more data is going to come down, so I would rather go down that route. Structured SMBG does not sort CGMS. Go back to a structured SMBG, doing more readings on the focused area rather than doing 7-point blinded, where I found there was a problem. And if that does not result, then another diagnostic AGP. I think that is where the cost effectiveness would be. But yes, giving the patient a choice. Ideally, CGMS is the best thing. There's no argument on that it can beat an SMBG. There is no argument. But looking at the pocket, looking at the understanding of the patient, if you can't go for pure gold, we'll have to balance that gold with, a polished gold. If somebody can't buy a real, diamond jewelry, you have to go for American diamond somewhere and balance it out. And if, somebody is wearing an, so you have to find a way out for your patients. I think that is where I would. Manoj, you want to add something?
No, I just, one, of course, I'm getting indicators as the co-chair that we have about 11 minutes. And I think there are a lot of discussions and sessions that Anjali had planned. So I will ask Anjali to make it like a speech short round that where she's going to shoot questions and all of us giving very short answers. Rapid fire was the word. Yeah, thanks, Raji. Okay. I just wanted to just make a comment and see if there anybody wants to change that or doesn't agree that both GMI and estimated A1C are overrated, and I think we shouldn't be looking at it at all. Is there anybody who thinks otherwise about GMI?
I agree. I agree with you.
GMI is something I couldn't understand actually, Manoj.
Great. So I think we are all done with that. Anjali, over to you for the rapid fire now over the 10 minutes.
Just one question, Manoj, if Anjali allows me. Bansi bhai, you were in the last meeting. Taking cue from what Mithun said, that are we going to become tighter or not? Last time they reduced the time of hypoglycemia. That update that you brought out last meeting, you reduced the time spent in hypoglycemia. Am I correct? So what are the further indications that discussed in that meeting?
So, sir, actually, the GDM already, the pregnancy with type 1 or even for type 2 diabetes or pre-gestational diabetes, that's already a tighter glycemic control between 63 to 140.
Yeah.
At this point of time, there is a grade 1 hyperglycemia, which is between 180 to 250, and grade 2 hyperglycemia, which is above 250. Now, above 250, it is 5%, less than 5% is still acceptable, but they want that should be reduced. Actually, there should not be like a more than 250, or we have to keep a, cap that one should not go above 250. The similar way, the hypoglycemia range is one which is between 72 to 54, and the second is below 54. Yes. The second aspect that below 54, we should try to avoid as much as possible, which is in elderly population or with the person with a significant risk of hypoglycemia and hypoglycemia unawareness. It is even not acceptable for less than 1% of the time want to go for less than 54. So the tighter glycemic control or tighter time in range will be like that most of the time it will be between 70 to 180, but chances of going class 2 hyperglycemia or class 2 hypoglycemia, that should be significantly reduced. I think that should be the first thing that should happen. And then probably, as Mithun is saying, in future, there may be a possibility that we may go between 70 to 180 or 70 to 160. Because why 180? There is no reason why we had kept 180. There is no evidence that why upper level is 180. Why not it is 140? Why not it is 160? Why not it is 190? There is no evidence for that. So we may get some evidence for that. At present, only evidence is if one person is keeping 70% of the time between 70 to 180, it correlates well with A1C, because then it is estimated A1C comes somewhere around 6.7, and that is what the target A1C. But if we get between 70 to 160, probably the target will be 6.5. So tomorrow, American Association of Clinical Endocrinology may come out that their target A1C is less than 6.5. So the time in range with 70% of the time, they should remain between 70 to 160, because then it correlates well with
Thank you, Bansi bhai. Thank you. Brilliant answer. Over to Anjali. Thank you, Bansi bhai.
Great. So I think all matters and all depends on how we are using the patient. And then we decide which technology to use, which targets to keep, and how to improve the outcome. With the suggestion of winding up in 10 minutes, we will take two more questions. I think we have talked enough about evaluation of diabetes through CGM and RT-CGM. We could talk more if we have time, but we will move ahead and we'll take two more questions. One is about the recent advances in insulin pumps that are available in India. So, Dr. Debashish, would you like to highlight what is the the newest technology available in insulin pump today in India? And then we will have an important question on mecnovigilance, how not to make the technology a nuisance and headache from Dr. Manoj Chawla. And of course, all the panelists can contribute. So over to you, Dr. Debashish.
Yes, I think insulin pump, we have just one manufacturer currently, and one from Medtronic, it's only available. So there is no other player. So I think there are only two basically brands available to make makeovers. I think 620, 640. So what maximum they have done is that if you get a hypoglycemia, the pump stops automatically, and it resumes automatically after you reach normoglycemia. So it happens multiple times till you come to the safe range. That is what, and it also gives you a little navigation. It will tell you in half an hour you're going to reach hypoglycemia below 70, like that. Same for upward trend also. So, and you also get alarms and alerts. That's what till we have got it.
Perfect. So from the
what I got the insight from Medtronic global headquarters and from some other experts, I think next year, maybe mid next year, we might get almost a closed loop insulin pump that is.
I guess his network is unstable. But what he was trying to convey was that we are very close to the closed loop right now in India, where we can predict hypoglycemia and the pump can automatically act on it. And we can also predict that the glucose is going up and the insulin delivery can restart automatically. We might have total closed loop in few months or a year or so. With that, we will go to the last aspect of our discussion, which is on mecnovigilance, as to how to use the technology to its maximum potential and not cause problems with it.
Okay,
so to Manoj, sir, recent publication on this topic, may I request you to start with?
So Anjali, before I get to talking about mecnovigilance, I'll just complete what Debashish was trying to say. So in India, we still have 640G as what is available, which has the maximum feature of low glucose suspend. Let's understand that when we talk about these aspects of low glucose suspend, this would work only when you use the pump with a CGM, with a CGM which is of that same company, which communicates. 670G is what was available. They have just about launched 690G, and the advantage of 690G beyond the 670 is 670 was giving you automated basal based on the algorithms approved by the FDA and EMEA. The 690 now, besides the automated basal, is also doing automated bolus correction. So that's a little advancement. When do we get it in India, and how many of our patients can afford it is only for us to see. So mecnovigilance, when you asked that question, and that's something that we decided to speak about. Now this, we all have been using technology, and a lot of us here are passionate about it. Everybody in the panel, Bansi, Jyoti, who gave the talk and the interview. Unfortunately, I think it's time that here, in the auspices of whether it's RSSDI, Dr. A.K. Das sir is here, we need to form a committee which is going to look into aspects of technology use in medicine. And when we talk about diabetes, this has been a gray zone. Mecnovigilance was a word which the ADA and the EMEA formed in 2015, which spoke about looking and monitoring the safety of technological devices and use of technology in diabetes and medicine. Today, when we are selling pumps here in our country, most of us are aware that one of the biggest limitation is the fact that there is no compulsion on the patients to follow up with us. The ease of availability of accessories sometimes prevents, especially our type 1 patients, on even keeping a track on their HbA1cs. Just getting hold of the device or a pump which they can afford to is not the end of the treatment. There have been various instances of our patients on the pump who have not monitored, whose HbA1c has worsened after the initiation of pump therapy. Some of them have landed up with cannula sites infections and abscesses requiring surgeries. And all of this is because of lack of any monitoring or lack of any regulation when it comes to technology use. Now, today, for example, the launch of RT-CGM by Abbott Libre. Now, ideally, when they have launched this product, it is even without the software available, which is mandatory to see an AGP and to record it and share it with the doctor or with the family. Why would, in the lack of regulations, is the problem was why would such a product be allowed to be launched in India, which would not be launched in any other country without the software? Also, who is monitoring if there are issues with the site? Who is monitoring if there are allergies? Who is monitoring if there are cannula-related problems? There have been a lot of these issues over the years, and because it was very selective usage, and very often we were also banking on the technical guy from the company in guiding us and helping us understand this better, a lot of this was swept under the carpet over the years. But as every society and as every country evolves in its understanding of technology, I think it's high time in India that whether it's the task force or any government body is appointed, which starts looking at safety aspects about the use of technology in country. And when I have not written a paper on the same, but this is one of the case studies of ours which we have submitted for publishing in the RSSDI casebook that Dr. Rajiv Chawla is currently compiling and shall be printing. But I've been speaking about this to Medtronic and to many others that it's high time that we do this. And I want comments from every panelist, depending on the time, about the thoughts. And I'm sure everybody would have similar instances where they have felt all of this is going unnoticed and unmonitored.
I think I would agree with Manoj. I think there has to be a regulation that we can regulate what is happening. I think he's spoken the mind of a lot of clinicians who are practicing it. And I'm sure if RSSDI, we could collaborate with the government, because the government has to, it has to be a stick policy for the pharma company or the products who are bringing it, because the organizations has to have the support of the government to do that. And I think that would really help.
So just like pharmacovigilance, Anjali, mecnovigilance is reporting. All of us should start at least reporting every issue that comes about with the technology usage in our patients. Rajiv?
I completely agree with you, Manoj, that one, the AGP should not have been launched without the software. And this vigilance is important. Also, another aspect is the apps which are being used. So there are a lot of apps which are available on our smartphones, and a lot of patients are using it without actually knowing whether the kind of AI built in the app is actually going to help them or not. So it's a huge problem, because the kind of advice the apps give may not be what is actually true and right for the patient. And that also can lead to a lot of issues. So there's a huge need for...
Manoj.
Yes, sir, you wanted to add something.
My video cannot open, but can I speak? Yeah. I'm not part of the panel.
Please, Dr. Rajiv Chawla, go ahead.
Referred. Yeah, fortunately, we have Bansi and Professor Das also. And Bansi has already made a technology task force. And I think all 4 or 5 of you are part of that. I think this is high time we issue a guidance, not only for healthcare worker, but also guiding people with diabetes, and also sort of an advisory to Government of India. Like we have made guidelines. That time we were not very well versed with the technology and all that last year.
True.
So this is time that we can have a advocacy role played as a technology task force, and that we can take it up with Government of India from RSSDA also, if Bansi is okay with that.
Yeah, Rajiv, Bansi has already told me we're trying for that. The devices have to be approved by the DCGI.
Yeah,
same person.
That is what I mean, that we should issue a guidance to the industry.
Somani, what happens? Somani, who comes on TV for last 3-4 days, he came for the Covaxin, Covaxil controversy, and he is the DCGI now.
Yeah.
Our friend, very close friend of ours. Now, Bansi has told me, and we are trying that we should be represented. But my point is, when the devices got approval, this device must have got approval, Rajiv, na? How did it get approval without the software? I don't understand.
That is, you have been at DGHS level also. We approached last year, 3 years ago, we approached Government of India that you let RSSDA play an advocacy role whenever you take decisions like that. You involve us as a knowledge partner. We are not going to be a commercial partner, but you make us a knowledge partner, so that whenever you take a call, either by DCGI or by Government of India Ministry of Health, RSCGI should be taken into confidence.
We are trying for that. We'll have it.
Yeah.
So one aspect was the software part not there and being approved, and the other aspects are just like pharmacovigilance. Even if the product is approved, there needs to be a mecnovigilance or whatever term that we want to, because nobody's reporting these cases and issues with technology, and that's creating a problem as we move ahead.
I think that's a very good suggestion. I'll ask Bansi to write that, and I will sign it also, and it will go to Soman in no time. Pharmacovigilance is headed by one of my
from task force. We are going to make the guidance.
Yeah, please.
And already from the type 1 diabetes, whatever which we have done, we have already submitted that thing to
and always government will ask Bansi bhai two names for the techno.
We will definitely go with this task force guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. And also for technovigilance, you have to give 2 names. We give the name of Urmila, professor of pharmacology from Bombay, the famous lady. And she is today the chief of the pharmacovigilance. And we have a lot of data on the PIO, which is negative data that it can be used safely. So it has helped us. So I think we'll do that. Please continue.
Welcome, Rajiv, to this session. You are in the next.
Today, Rajiv is in the tie and,
No, Dr. Asar told me he conducted my interview 3 days ago, and he told me that you have to be in the same dress.
Yeah, I told him. I
had no option.
It is not recorded. Rajiv is live. You will see him live. So
you are live.
Yeah, Rajiv is live.
Dear friends, Manoj, Anjali, Bansi, my dear younger brother, Rajiv Kovil, Mithun, Professor Das, and Rajiv, my dear friend. So this was a really great
session.
New concepts have come up, new concepts have emerged, and we must take it to real statutory level, and people have a right to get benefits. It has also consumer aspect. So a lot of things has to be discussed. Thank you, Anjali, for preparing nice questions, taking a lot of work. Manoj for guiding and taking the advantage. Rajiv, you have wonderful presentation. Mithun, in spite of your travel and net connectivity, still you could join. And Professor Ashok Das, I thank all of you.